All right. So, there's a lot going on in the world. We all know Trump is trying to figure out how to get out of this war in Iran, which I think is pretty nuts that we are the ones like angling to go to solve this war in Iran. And the Iranians are like, maybe we'll come, maybe we'll not. I don't know. We'll see. Like, it's pretty amazing. But yeah, so there's a lot going on, obviously international news, but we also have, we're zeroing in on 2026. And we have candidates running around for 2028. Obviously, we're still seeing them. And then someone had an idea that has come up. I know it's on the Republican side and a little bit on the Democrats. Should we do a midterm convention before we get to 2028? Should we go ahead and do a convention right now? What do you think?
Well, having been the chief of staff at the 2016 Democratic Convention, I mean, I absolutely love the convention every 4 years. I mean, it's one of my favorite things that we do as Democrats. I look forward to it for years coming up. And so I think a midterm convention would be a fantastic idea. Let's bring everybody together. We have a lot of ideas that are competing right now, and we need to start talking those out and having that kind of a very public debate and getting some reaction back to kind of where people are, I think would be an excellent thing for the party.
I know. Now, there is a practical problem, right? As someone who ran a convention, how the hell do you pull together, a convention with thousands of people from all over the country? Or would you just do like maybe something smaller? It's more virtual. It's kind of like that 2020 convention, which we all basically just watched on television, except for the people who were in that drive-through at the, drive-in in their cars.
Well, you could certainly do it virtual, and that would be a way to make it so that probably actually doable. If you were going to do it live, I mean, obviously it's going to be a lot smaller than the actual Democratic convention. The security issues would be significantly easier because you're not going to have an actual presidential nominee or a United States sitting president as one of the main speakers, right? In 2016,
Right.
We had Obama come, we had former President Clinton come, Hillary Clinton was there. It's a security nightmare. I mean, it's a national security event, is the actual classification for it. And so obviously tons and tons and tons of stuff goes into preparing for that. So we certainly can't hold something that big, but you could fill up an arena and have 2 days or 2 nights of speakers, and maybe some kind of like back and forth kind of conversations, debates, really hash out a lot of these things. You'd be able to highlight all of your sort of hot Senate candidates, House candidates that are looking to swing seats. I think it'd be great to have James Tallarico have a national stage so he can get kind of like, a wide viewing audience to be able to help him in his race to take that Texas Senate seat back. I think it'd be a very, very interesting idea if we could do it sort of, end of July, early August. And hopefully it would build a lot of momentum going into the midterm elections.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting question because what we would get out of it. You have all these candidates on stage. They're coming from different points of view. Is it kind of the AOC Bernie vision that people are interested in? Are these non-traditional candidates that everyone's talking about? The Graham Plattners of the world, are they the ones, Mamdani, are they the ones that will really sell? Or are there some of these, more mainstream politicians like the Andy Bashirs of the world that people are looking to and saying, you know what, maybe we just need somebody who's got some strong, policy government chops and can sell in every community in America. I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting to see how that shook out, right?
Yes, if I was designing it, I would have as many possible viewpoints from the Democratic progressive side of things as everyone. Let's hear from AOC. Let's hear from Rahm Emanuel. This would be absolute catnip for the 2028 contenders, though.
Yes.
And every single one of them would want to have a speaking role to be able to be highlighted on that national stage. Now, I will say we've talked a little bit about some of the struggles that the DNC has been having raising money, and this would be a very, very expensive endeavor. But if you could get the press to come and cover it, it might be worth it.
I just saw something today. I want to see if I can pull it up. Oh, here it is. So we have seen, we see our friend Leah Daughtry has come and joined us here on Trailblaze. Look at her. I love that color.
Hello.
Yes.
How
Good
are you?
morning. Hello. We're good.
Morning,
We're
good
good.
morning.
So we are just chatting about a topic that you probably going to just jump you in here, like straight to the
go right to it.
straight to the pool. We were talking about this topic that has kind of been moving around, and people are thinking about: should we have a midterm convention? Should we try to pull everybody together in August and give a bunch of platform stages to people and see what they sort out? What do you think?
No.
I love the
that politically or logistically, because you know more about this logistically.
So everybody, Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce Leah so people know who she is? You guys have worked together a bunch of times, so I'll let you do the honors on this one.
Yeah, so we are super honored to have Bishop Leah Daughtry here with us today. Leah is a longtime Democratic operative. She's been the chief of staff of the DNC. She's been the CEO of the Democratic Convention twice in 2008 and 2016. The only person who signed up, did that once and said, "Oh, I'll take a little more of that," and did it twice. She's the founder and co-convener of the Power Rising Conference that just wrapped up this past weekend. Kamala Harris was one of your main attendees, but most importantly, for the topics that we're going to talk about today, Leah has served for a long time on the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee. And so let's just jump in, Leah. For millennia, if you wanted to be the Democratic nominee, you packed up your bags and you spent a lot of time for the 2 years leading up to the primary contests in Iowa and New Hampshire. And that's just what you did. You met people, you built an organization, you tried to get your name out there, you tried to get to know as many people as possible. In the early 2000s, we added South Carolina and Nevada into that mix, and those were sort of the 4 early states. But 2020 came around, and things, didn't go great in Iowa from a reporting standpoint, and people really started to question kind of whether these early states were representative enough, whether the caucuses were actually a fair way to do things, whether that was actually the most democratic way we could get people to express their opinions, and so the DNC kind of changed the rules going into the 2024 nomination contest. And obviously we are, here less than 2 years before the 2028 nominating contest. And if you are one of the 360 politicians vying to be the Democratic nominee, you actually don't know what the first couple of states are going to be. So for the poor schedulers out there, can you kind of give us some insight on what's going on, when we're going to know stuff, how that process is going to work? And because it's the Rules and Bylaws Committee that's going to be deciding all of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's good to see you both and be part of the conversation. It is that time for us to talk about 2028 and what's happening and what's going to be happening. I think I got a whole lot of stuff going on here, but
Leah always has a lot of stuff going on. People, Matt just went through her entire resume.
No. That bio was about a fifth of the resume. There's a lot more. So.
I know. We didn't even get into family history. We didn't get into the book. We didn't get into the movie. We didn't get into anything that's going on in our world. So anyway, we're going to stay on politics for a second.
10 pots on a 2-burner stove. So, so what's happening right now? Generally, and people don't know this, we start formulating the rules for the 2028 cycle or any presidential cycle immediately following the cycle just concluded. So we started actually in 2025, thinking about the 2028 calendar. So what we're doing now is creating the delegate selection rules for how people get to serve as delegates and what those rules for the state parties are in terms of selecting delegates and what their process has to be. And we're also considering what we call the call to convention, which is the rules for the convention and how the convention gets set up and organized from the party perspective, not the logistics of it, but just from the party perspective of how many delegates will there be, what the apportionment of those delegates are going to be. And part of that call to convention is the primary calendar itself. So the calendar, if you think about it, it's in two parts. One is what we call the pre-window, and then there's the window. And so the window is when any state can choose whatever date they want to choose and set their primary, whatever way they want to set their primary, according to their state law, their state legislation, all of that. It's in that window period that you find Super Tuesday. What we are discussing now is what happens in the pre-window or the early states. These are people who have special permission to go and to set their primaries before the window opens. So as Matt, gave the synopsis, he's exactly right. We've been sort of fooling with this calendar now for the last couple of cycles, really trying to create something that, one, gives us the strongest that produces the strongest nominee, but also that is really representative of who the Democratic Party is today. So we're in the process of doing that now. We sent out an RFP, if you will, to all the state parties saying, if you want to apply to be in the pre-window, send us an application. We'll consider it. And so we've gotten 12 applications. We gave them some criteria of what we're looking for. It has to be affordable. It has to be representative in some way, shape, or form. And you've got to abide by various and sundry other rules that we have, including that your state legislature will allow you to move your calendar date. Yeah. Lots of states apply, but then they don't have the legislative power, or they may have a Republican legislature, which is not willing to allow them to move their dates up. And remember, the GOP is running the same process. Parallel to our process. Obviously, their criteria is going to be different. They have different calendar dates. In some states, Democrats and Republicans are on the same day. In other states, they're not. So we got 12 applications, and we're in the process now of reviewing those. We will meet for a marathon 3-day meeting at the end of May, where each state that is applying will come forward and make their case for why they should be part of the pre-window. We expect to do 4 states. So finally, after everything, wind up with 4 states in the pre-window, maybe 5, 1 in each region, the Northeast, the South, the Midwest, and the West. So we'll see where we wind up after 3 whole days, glorious days of listening to states do their dog and pony show.
You just said something that was really interesting to me, the idea about the Republicans and they're running their own parallel process. Would you rather have a Democratic primary or caucus date on the same day as Republicans or on different days than Republicans?
In the old days, we would coordinate with the GOP and try to do things on the same day. It's easier for voters. It's easier for candidates, whatever side of the aisle they're on. And it just makes things more complicated when, people want different dates and so forth. But that was the old days. We have a new Republican Party now, and they're not interested in collaborating and talking with us about how we've tried based on past precedent, but they're not really interested in collaboration.
Yeah. So Leah,
I'm sure that surprises no one.
Yeah,
exactly.
Leah, give us an idea. So even though we don't know what the first 4 or 5 states will be, give us where do you think like the first date could possibly be that this contest starts? Are we talking January 28, February, or kind of where would that be?
I think if it was up to us, it would probably be early February. Much depends on how New Hampshire happens to be feeling this cycle. They have state law. They have a state law that says they have to be first in the nation primary. So for all of these years, they were first in the nation primary. Iowa was first in the nation caucus, which New Hampshire was willing to allow Iowa to either go right after them or right before them, because Iowa was a caucus and New Hampshire is a primary, so they were sort of threading that needle.
Mm-hmm.
And they take their state law very, very seriously. And so in 2024, if you recall, it was a problem. And basically, we moved South Carolina to be the first primary in the nation. New Hampshire was not happy. They insisted on that they had to be first. We stripped them of their delegates for going first. That was what we told them we would do. In the end, they had a second primary later in the process, a beauty contest primary, which when we honored the results of that, in order for them to get their delegates back.
That's
so,
kind of elegant. That was kind of elegant. Everybody.
Yeah, we thought so. We thought so.
I like that.
Yeah. And they, it allowed them to get their delegates back, because who wants to have that fight? But it reinforced that we were serious about our calendar. We wanted South Carolina to go first. That was important to President Biden, that we have diversity at the top of the process and not somewhere later. And for the signals that it sends, we've all been in this business long enough to know that, you didn't win New Hampshire or Iowa, you were pretty much done.
Yeah.
In terms of your candidacy. And many of us felt like that was not a fair indication of the strength of a candidate, given the homogenous nature of Iowa and New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And that other people who make other communities that really invest in the Democratic Party and who are some of the Democratic Party's most loyal voters ought to have a say, and candidates ought to have to come to them.
Yeah.
And demonstrate their ability to talk to Latino voters and to talk to African American voters. Those are the voters that the party depends on for its wins. So a candidate who cannot convince Latino voters or African American voters that they are viable really does not portend well for the general election.
I keep hearing about 3 states in particular. We just talked about South Carolina, Nevada, which was already in the first 4, and they're kind of vying to be, in that first primary window. At least the first state in the West they want to be, or South Carolina wants to be the first in the South, and then Michigan, which is my home state where I'm from. That they're raising the big question. I think people raise questions about Michigan because it's so large and maybe expensive.
Yeah.
But tell me how you guys are thinking about those questions of like the size of the state geographically to get around, the amount of media markets, and how expensive it is to buy ads, that kind of stuff. Is that part of the mix as you're thinking?
Oh, yeah. It's part of the consideration, because we're not trying to have our candidates go broke in the early window.
Right.
And the number of media markets, the cost of ad buys is definitely a factor and part of what we ask them about in their application. But, these days, media is different. It's not network television alone. It's, what's happening on YouTube. YouTube is probably now the largest. In fact, I heard something over the weekend that YouTube is where more people get their news than any place else.
Yeah.
So what does a YouTube ad cost? I mean, the whole media landscape has completely changed from when, I first started in this business. So ad buys are certainly important. The media markets are important, but also we ask them about how they're thinking about social media, how they're thinking about influencer and content creators. How does a candidate engage with those communities as well, since so many people now get their news that way?
Yeah. Leah, are there any states, other than Michigan, are there any other states that are not what kind of some of the traditional states that we've seen in that are vying for it, that are in this 12 that might be interesting to you? If you can say that.
Yeah, no, it's public. So in the Northeast, you have New Hampshire and Delaware, Delaware is interesting. In the West, it's Nevada and New Mexico.
Okay.
And so New Mexico offers some interesting demographics in terms of indigenous Americans, American Indian communities. But, they have the same sort of Latino mix as Nevada. So that's also interesting. In in the South, I think that's where the real conversation's going to happen. You have North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Virginia, all vying for the early slot. So, I don't know. Some people like Georgia. Georgia's also, relatively speaking, a larger state with a couple of media markets.
Yep.
Can bleed over into Florida in terms of media market as well. So that's going to be, I think, one of the more interesting discussions. Some folks are interested in Tennessee. And what that might look like in terms of, the rural communities in Tennessee, and how a candidate might campaign there. So there are many factors, and I will also say one of the most interesting factors is that we have a new rules committee. Rules committee used to be 35 people, and now it's 49 people.
Oh, wow.
That makes it easier to make decisions.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
It's so much more manageable that way.
So much more manageable. And many of them, they're some of them are state chairs. Some of them have never served on the rules committee before. So they're bringing a different kind of perspective to the conversation. But it just means that, us old hacks, we kind of speak in a little bit of shorthand with each other, but having new voices means that, everything gets re-examined. So it's going to be an interesting process to
and
get
it's
to
probably
the fore.
healthy. I'm sure it's annoying in some ways, but it's probably healthy because we do have to reinvigorate the process and give people a chance to, participate and figure it out. And like you just said, things are changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And they've been a real injection in the arm, because it makes people like me who've been on the rules committee for 10 years say, well, the reason we do that is let me remember why we do it the way we do it. And of course, and look, we've had some votes so far where we have robust discussion and we wind up where we were, but the discussion was necessary, just if only to reaffirm the principles that, we've been using for the last many years.
So I want to ask you, we were kind of just playing around in the beginning about a midterm convention, although people have that idea. But I know that the convention committee, I think, is getting started, and people are thinking about what are the big cities that people are looking at. Atlanta and Chicago and New York. I think Los Angeles. 4 or 5.
Not New York this time.
Not New York this time.
Sadly, not New York this time.
No.
Atlanta, Boston, Philadelphia, Denver, Chicago are apparently all in the mix.
Okay, there we go.
Atlanta, Boston.
Yeah.
Yes, it's 5 cities altogether.
Okay, so can you just tell people what the process is for picking a convention city and kind of the timeline that choice should be known so they can go ahead and book their hotel rooms?
Well, so what happens is the DNC sends out an RFP to generally the largest cities in the country. Asking them about their interests. Cities write back and say, yeah, I'm interested. And then you start a process of really trying to navigate these cities through the logistics of it. Because in the end, electoral map doesn't matter as much as can the city manage the logistics of basically a small city plopping down on them. It's about 50,000 people that come. You got to have hotel rooms. You got to have buses. You got to have a place for these people to watch the convention. You got all of this infrastructure that has to be examined. You kick the tires and all of that. How much weight can you put on the ceiling of the arena for equipment? I mean, the load bearing of this, those sorts of nitty gritty. Is there a parking lot that's big enough for the bus? All of this sort of thing.
Where will people protest? I imagine you got to figure that out.
Where will people protest?
Always.
We're Democrats. We love a good protest.
Yes.
And so, you got to have the protest. And by our rules, the protest area has to be within sight and sound of the arena. So all of these things, the logistical things, are the primary consideration. There's generally a technical advisory committee that goes to each of the bidding cities to kick the tires, to ask the questions, to meet with the key principals like the police chief and the fire chief and the head of the arena. All of these people, because you're going to be in a relationship with them for 2 years, and you got to trust that they know what they're doing. and that they're going to be able to deliver. So those visits, I think, start this weekend to those 5 cities, and then they will come back with a recommendation to the chair. And the chair is the one that makes the decision.
And that's usually a year out from convention day?
No, they will probably,
months?
When Howard Dean was chair, we changed a bit of the process so that we narrowed it down to 2 cities, and we negotiated contracts with both of them to see where we would wind up with the deal. And we finished, generally as a CEO, I moved to the city a year out, at least.
Right.
With my team. So the decision should be made, before the end of this year, because you really do need, it's not one of those things you can do virtually. You really do need to be in the city when you're planning tons of meetings, tons of things that have to happen that just too difficult to do virtually. So they should be making decisions in a traditional timeline before the end of the year, because you want your team to move there pretty quickly.
Awesome. And then, obviously in 2020, that was the weird year, right? Because we had the COVID. That was the weird year. And everybody got the prom all ready, and then the balloons were up, and, the couples couldn't show up to the dance.
That's right. That's right. It was very strange. It worked out, and I think everybody understood. It's nothing like being in the convention hall. There's just it's an irreplaceable experience. But given the health concerns, did you really want to have 30,000 people in a closed space when you have a pandemic floating around? I think many of the delegates didn't want to go. So it was the prudent decision to try to shift to a virtual thing. And
I asked the question because what I'm wondering is, now after that experience, has that changed in the thinking? I mean, you never know what emergency could happen, but you got to have some sort of backup plans, right? You got to be thinking about what happens if we can't do this the way we envision and imagine, and how much that is impacting the process.
That's exactly right. You got to have your backup plan, which, we always have like this sort of shadow backup plan, but you have to, think about contingencies. And certainly 2024 was one of those years that didn't go exactly as planned not in terms of the logistics, but in terms of, the changing of the candidate with 107 days to go. But, Democrats, we love the weeds. And so, we had rules for that. And I know, the popular opinion out in the hinterlands is that we were making this up, but we actually weren't. There are rules for what happens if the candidate becomes incapacitated, can't serve, or whatever. And I happen to have been chair of the rules committee for the convention. So we just fell into the rules that already existed and that we had written 2 years earlier. So, we were not unprepared in case something needed to switch. And that's all part of the call to the convention document, is these contingencies.
Yeah, trying to figure out every possible scenario that can go wrong, and what you do if we do go wrong. I mean, I think one of my first jobs working for Leah back in 2008 was I had to set up the shadow site for the convention, which was a big airplane hangar with a bunch of seats and a podium, because the nomination has to occur. You have to get the delegates together, and they have to vote in that case to make sure that Barack Obama was the nominee, because we had to follow the rules. So if something had happened to the Pepsi Center in downtown Denver, everybody would have been put on a bunch of buses, sent out there, very quick vote, and, but Barack Obama is the nominee. So, COVID was obviously a much, much bigger kind of logistical hurdle than that, but we got it done.
Yeah.
So.
And to Matt's point, we do that every cycle. People just don't know about it, don't hear about it, and it never gets used because we've never had to use that contingency plan, but it's always a part of the planning.
Right.
Leah, before we get you out of here, are there any thoughts that you've got about some of the potential candidates in 2028? Anybody you like, anybody you don't like? And obviously, if your position on the Rules and Bylaws Committee does not allow you to answer those questions, we're not going to press you on it. But you did talk to Kamala Harris this weekend, so I'd love to get your take.
She's a dear friend for many, many, many years. And so we had we had the opportunity. She came to Power Rising along with a bunch of others, but I had the opportunity to interview her on Sunday. And she was, very forthcoming and open and a little vulnerability showing. And
Good.
we promised each other backstage that neither one of us would cry and on stage. And we came really close to breaking that promise to each other, but it was she became very emotional when she talked about post-election day, post the results, and what happened, and how she felt about and not wanting to let people down.
Yeah, and
her concern that she was letting people down. And so it was a moment. You can watch it on YouTube on The Root. The Root was our publishing partner, and you can see the interview on YouTube on the Root's channel. But listen, it's going to be 900.
Before you leave that, I want to say this because it's something that when I worked for her, I saw every day, and I always understood the importance of it. I have a small daughter, and I always understood the importance of having this Black woman as vice president and possible president. But every day, literally every day she goes out in public, some little girl grabs her hand and looks at her like she's Wonder Woman. Some older person grabs her hand and says, I never thought I would see the day. Even people who didn't vote for her. I didn't vote for you, but I'm just so proud that you're there. Right. And the weight that I just imagine you carry around when looking back at you in every crowd are all these women and girls who see every possibility in your presence, and what that meant. So I always felt a great responsibility to it. I know she did. And I think anybody who underestimates that doesn't know her well at all.
Yeah, we had a gentleman who came to the brunch on Sunday. He didn't have tickets. He just heard she was going to be there. He brought his two little girls with him. Their mom had died some years ago. And he said, I just want them to see Kamala Harris. So I said, sure, come on in. And when it was over, he was so emotional. He said, because they don't have a mom in the home, it's been hard for his daughters to see women in leadership. And to see someone like Kamala in the room up close was just, he was so emotional. We had students from Prairie View. Yeah. They were emotional. There's something about her and the role that she's played in so many different places, the trailblazing role that she's played, that makes her this iconic figure for folks. And it's really moving to see, like I've known her forever, and just sort of standing back and watching what happens. She's in a crowd, particularly with Black women. It's just, it's amazing. It's just amazing. So she was in rare form this weekend. So,
all right. So Matt asked you got anybody else? Who else you looking at?
Look, there's going to be 942 people running for president. And so, and it's going to be an interesting cycle because it's open on both sides. Right. So you're going to have openness on Republicans, openness on the Democrats. So we're going to see what this mix is going to be on our side. I'm not sure yet. We are likely to do our famous, or infamous Color Girl dinners again, and talk to the candidates and see who's saying what, who's doing what. We've talked to some of them already, and it's they're interesting. So I don't have a horse in this race right now. We're waiting to see, but it's early because no one has announced. So I got time.
Yeah, you do have time. That's a lot it's like 30 dinners. So you guys have to work on the scheduling to get all you guys together.
I hope not. So, yeah.
All right. Well, Leah Daughtry, thank you for joining us on Trailblaze. We're the first place to talk about 2028 every week. I know it's early, but it's never too early to get ready to make a change.
Never too early. At least not for us hacks, right? We love it.
Right. Exactly.
This is our time of year.
And if anybody out there is listening and wants to get in touch with us, please send us an email at blaze@trailblazepod.com. We look forward to hearing from you, and that may show up on a future episode of our podcast. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time.